do 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 do. Intro music so great. Welcome, audience. Welcome. It's so refreshing to see your bright and smiling faces from all over the place. Saidness Slytherin like drawl. I gotta tell you, I went to a meeting yesterday, a meeting again, and I can talk to you about it because I can talk to you about what this guy said because he is a book author and it is in his book. So I don't have to, what's the book called? I have to talk to him about it next week. But basically, I've started going to all kinds of like group meetings and stuff and all kinds of group therapy. And I mean, I'm glad, okay? But I've got to tell you, as a person who's left the official church building that they call the church building, which is like the building in the walls of the church that's called the church, I was like, I need to start going to places where other people gather similarly in person, but they're not, but these said here people are not Christian per se. I mean, like one might show up, but the whole group's not Christian as a rule. And so, basically, I go to this meeting. This guy's book author's there, and he's talking about how when his wife was dying, she was throwing up a lot, and when he would be looking at her, she would actually stop throwing up, and if he was nearby, she wouldn't feel that almost any like pain or anything, and or wouldn't feel that sick. And so for 18 months he lived off popcorn and something else, and he stayed awake the whole time almost, because as soon as he'd nod off, she would start to throw up. Like he'd hear her, like if she walked across the house to the other end of the house and his wife started to, he'd wake up and she'd start throwing up violently. And so basically, like, she was kept alive for probably like it sounds like an extra 17 months. It sounds like she was doing so bad, but that they were able to spend like they enjoyed their time together, and he wrote a book about it. But afterwards, like, he has communication with her and stuff, and he wasn't like saying it like I'm some saint, you know what I mean? He was like just really matter of fact. And I was thinking about the contrast because I had gone to the local Calvary Chapel years ago during a massive scandal. And the scandal was so big that their mega church in Yucca Valley, California, had split. I mean, it was like a split. Like, I was a brand newcomer, like a little, person. What year was this? In 2000, and I'm going to give you a contrast story. What was it? 2009 or 10, somewhere in that range. So like 16 years ago. But this was like, if you are a teenager listening, I'm sure you were like an old person wandering around with a stick, and then you dropped dead, and now you're you could have been sitting in the pews that day. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not saying that you really, you know what though? I don't believe in reincarnation, but I don't not believe in anything that's anything like it, because Jesus. I'm going to give you one, and I'm not saying it's because of Jesus that I believe this. I'm just going to tell you this because I feel like it's really ironic that I found out that some Abrahamic religions do not believe in reincarnation, but the other two do. Okay? One of them always does, and the other one, it depends on which one you're talking to. But the Bible clearly in the New Testament does state, Jesus is like, you see that John the Baptist guy over there? If you have the ability to receive it, that's Elijah. Come again. Like he's in the spirit in the thing of Elijah. And then Jesus goes on and he says, and guess what? He's also going to show up a third time as a type. It's like typology throughout the Bible. See, I lost everybody in my audience. Why did I say that? Because how do you think Elijah came back? Do you think that if Elijah, do you think when Jesus was like, you see John the Baptist, he's come in the power and the spirit of Elijah. And if you can believe that, it's Elijah himself. And if you can believe it later on, after this guy's gone, he's going to come back again. Okay, so now he's saying John the Baptist is Elijah. Just on a side note, we'll get back to the Calvary pastor in a minute. It relates to what I'm saying on a rabbit trail, sort of weird, pedantic, rantic sort of way. So, on a random note, because it's really early in the morning, do you guys know that there's a famous guy who got locked up with Charles Manson, and he said that Charles Manson could get everybody in his cell high on any kind of substance without them ever touching it? That his like powers of like whatever was going on there, like snake charming, was so strong that he said that he and all the guys would just suddenly get high. Like, and he would ask them, Charles Manson would be like, okay, he'd get him high on this, he'd get him high on that. They wouldn't have to touch the substance. Yep, just randomly. I just thought that was an important piece of information for you to hear. All right, so I guess, and then all these people get converted at church, right? So now imagine you've got someone like Charles Manson who can make people feel like you're high on heroin, you're high on fucking cocaine, whatever you want. And there's a Hollywood actor. Go look it up. I am not lying. I just watched it the other day. It's a face that when you see him, you'll be like, oh, I know who he is. I just can't think of his name right now. So now imagine that Charles Manson is not the only person with these powers. Imagine that pastors sometimes have these same powers. And it's like a snake charming kind of ability. In places like India, people would know. They'd be like, he's a snake charmer or something like that. And we'd all be like, watch out, don't stare in his eyes too long unless you want to get high. And so the thing is that then you've got pastors who have the same exact set of abilities as Charles Manson, but they've just decided to go mainstream. They decided to take the money, right? And so you have these people who walk into church thinking they're visiting, they're considering things, they'd like to have a conversation about Christianity, and the next thing you know, my dad was a con artist who could win you at poker and all this other stuff, and he said that when he went to church one time, not to get converted, he was dating someone or something and investigating something. He said that one time he actually got what he called possessed. He was standing there listening, and then 20 minutes later, approximately, he found himself at an altar weeping. He didn't remember what happened. This is the same fucking ability set. You have to entertain the thought that it is a possibility out there. And I posit to you that it could be the same ability set. Just what if? I'm not telling you, I'm just saying what if. I shouldn't have phrased it like it is. It just what if. Bear with me. Then is it possible that some of the people are there against their will and they don't even know it? Maybe. I have a scientific reason why I can tell you why I think that's possible. Are you ready? I read an article. You're going to have to go look it up, but all you have to do is if you understand the core idea of what I'm saying, you can type it in Google and Google will find it for you. All right. Type in there a study about, this is what I do whenever I'm not sure. I say, you're not supposed to say swim anymore, but I still say swim, just like the Redditors of years gone by before it was unpopular. ChatGPT, Swim told me something, and I don't know if I believe it. Swim said that narcissists or children who have a lot of attention paid to them when they're little get encouraged while they're babies to have every single thing, like pay attention to yourself, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to yourself. And as they get older, they keep doing it. So they pay attention to how they feel all the time, which gives them a lot of neural pathways devoted to themselves. Swim also told me that the the way that their anterior cingulate cortex functions is different than about 80% of the population, in that because they have so many neuron pathways devoted to themselves, when other people suffer, they don't feel a corresponding suffering within their own either psychology consciously or their physiology. Further, Swim told me that they get a preferential hit of dopamine when they successfully exploit someone, even if it's something simple like acting nice when they didn't mean it. And so, and with some trickery up the sleeve, and you might not find out till years later. But then Swim told me something way scarier than this. Swim also told me that children who are ignored when they're children, who are parentified, who are turned into parents for their parents from the time they're babies, who are forced to caregive for other people, who are objectified, who are put into labor or service or ignored and neglected when they go through things when they're babies, have to have more and more neural pathways devoted to other people so that they know who's coming up behind them. It's like having spidey senses in prison. You know who's there. You know, all the time, you're aware of everybody in your community. You know what they're doing. You know what time of day they're going to be passing. So you know where to avoid them and how to avoid them. Swim heard that people who've been traumatized have neural pathways devoted to other people, and that other people call it a gift like psychic powers. But in reality, it's over attunement to others, and that a person who's over attuned to others could inadvertently just fall into the mind stream like a whirling swirl from a narcissist or a princeling who has neural pathways devoted to themselves, and start to involuntarily attune their nervous system and regulate the other person for them to accomplish their goals. And it's called codependency. And entire cities are established in this way. You mean codependents are literally orbiting narcissists because of how their brains are built? I read an article that suggests this could be the case. And it's the reason why people don't just wander off from a city. You wonder, why don't they just wander off from the city? You could go live in a tribe. They did studies that showed that people in tribes, like, they have like pretty much no suicide, virtually no depression. Like, if you're gonna have such a great life and you work 1/3 of the hours a day that the city person works, and you're physically fit, if you could have a similar lifespan and all of these things are going to be better for you, you just walk away from the city right now, right? Why aren't you walking away? Because you got city genetics with epigenetic damage of people would never stay and serve a princeling in a city unless they were already orbiting said motherfucker from a subconscious level on a physiological level. And that's what I'm telling you. Okay? So, facts. Your audience isn't your audience. They would run if they could. Facts. Your mama was not even worthy to be called a bitch, and you know it. You know it. Facts. These people wouldn't be here, and later on they're going to beat you up. Facts. If the virgins were in the temple with the Lord, they'd string them up. Facts. The children would chase you down and cut out your eyes. Facts. Your towns are nothing but lies. Facts! There'd be blood running in the streets. Blood in the streets. This is Jim Morrison. In the town of New Haven, blood stains the roofs and the palm trees of Venice. Blood in my love in a terrible summer. Bloody red sun, fantastic LA. Blood screams his brain and chop off a finger. Saturday morning, the birth of a nation. Blood is the rose of a mysterious union. Blood on the rise is following me. That's Jim Morrison. Actually, he says another verse right after that. He goes, native, native, what did you die for? Native says, nothing at all. Gently they stir, gently they rise now. The dead are newborn awakening. Ravaged limbs and wet souls, gently they sigh in rapt funeral amazement. Who called these dead to dance? Was it the young woman learning to play the ghost song on her babygram? Was it the wilderness children? Was it the ghost god himself? Stuttering, churring, chatting blindly. I called you to anoint the earth. I called you to announce sadness falling like burned skin. And now I call on you to pray. That's Jim Morrison. Also, Jim Morrison, our fathers, he said, were doing something, and I switch the words around when I say it. Our mothers are cackling in the trees of the forest, our fathers dead in the sea. Back to the Calvary Chapel, Pastor, and there was something else as well. We went on sidetracks that were quite swell. Calvary Chapel, Pastor. I was all like a brightly innocent new, like, ooh, I'm just disassociated. I don't remember who I was. Let me go to church. And wandered into a Calvary Chapel one day, haphazardly. And the next thing you know, somebody's like, half of us are leaving, or something like that. Maybe it wasn't really half. Maybe it was a quarter. I don't know. But she was like, a whole bunch of us are out of here. That woman's name is Diane Garrido, a well-known hairdresser in the area who can really cut hair, and a very reasonable woman. But she was someone I already knew. I shouldn't have given you her last name. What's he do? Oh, well. So everybody knew it, though, I guess. And she's like, look, this guy's wife got cancer, Pastor Gerald over at the Calvary Chapel. And as soon as she got sick, he left town. And left another pastor in charge almost all the time. Yeah, all his assistants. And he would leave town they'd be there a little bit once in a blue moon. But he'd just leave town. But he wasn't leaving, just randomly leaving town as soon as his wife got sick. He had found another woman, a married woman, a pastor's wife up in Idaho. And he had taken a fancy to Mary Lee. And she also had a husband, but unfortunately, he also got sick. And then the two of them, he would fly out there and they would go cheat and run around together and do it and have sex and have dates in the same town that her husband was dying in. Because his husband, or like maybe one town over, but everybody knew. But her husband had a little church. He had a big old church. And everybody knew and watched it in horror. And she was like, he was basically trying to humiliate her in front of her entire church. And the lady said she'd been the pastor's wife for 20 years and people loved her so much and they were so traumatized that a quarter of the people had to leave the church because Calvary Chapel didn't want to do a damn thing about it, of course. I used to listen to Every Man an Answer, and one day someone called in about a pastor cheating on his wife in front of the church to Chuck Smith, and Chuck Smith was like, oh, well, you guys should just get over it. And so anyway, so the contrast was that I went to this like spiritual retreat center for it's not very spiritual. They were really down to earth normal, okay? But like it's a retreat center area that's supposed to be used for whatever. And this guy who's a book author was there. A different kind of power, I suppose. The pen or the sword. And then Pastor Gerald. And here's this guy who like kept his wife, like basically probably prolonged her life greatly and made her standard of living so much better. But he wouldn't leave her side, but he wouldn't even sleep. Ik heb motionlijk roos naar ook niet best niet roos niet naar bed die er niet niet bara det när snälla Göra mer hindren små hörnelsen. Is she playing the Beatles tapes backwards in her head? So I was like standing next to this guy, and I was feeling pressured to become a Christian. This is a real story. I was feeling like some internal pressure, and I was like, this is out of character. I already kind of didn't like it before, didn't like it during, don't like it now. And there was a guy who was in active psychosis nearby, and I was like, in my head, I finally put my foot down and I said, no more talk of Jesus. He's not going to help you. Whoever you are, you're probably another person out there, and this guy's, don't try to push him on me, but he's not going to help you either. And the next thing you know, this person in active psychosis started screaming, Jesus! All this other stuff. And I was like, oh my God, they heard me. And I was like, the next time that you feel, the way that I see it is there's probably like somebody else in the area who was trying to like, who's a narcissist who was using the image of Jesus to like torment the person who's got schizophrenia. And then I was overhearing the conversation in my head, and I was like, you really don't have to like go along with this. And then the guy with schizophrenia is all possessed by the church guy who is a tormentor. He was like, I'm taking this body back. And then I was like, oh my God, don't talk to just, this is not. Oh my God. It's funny because if you go around normal people, you can start doing so. I do not want other people to try this as an experiment at home. We're not going to expand on it. No, Jesus is a usurper. You haven't read the Bible much, have you, lately? It says it there. It also says he's an idol. John chapter 3, Jesus identifies himself as the serpent on the tree, which Moses made and lifted up in the wilderness. 2 Chronicles chapter 18, King Hezekiah, being a righteous king, destroyed the serpent on the tree because the people of Israel had begun to burn incense to it. He smashed it into pieces, took it to the valley of Kidron, where all the idols were kept, and he put it in the dried out brook, where there were guards, so that if you tried to leave your town to go get your idols, first the people in your town would try to stop you, your family, then the people at the gates, then there'd be people in the valley, and they would shoot you with arrows if you tried to go back and get that thing back. Why would the Bible call him a righteous king? I'm not saying you got to be no Christian to question this logic. I'm just telling you the Bible itself says a righteous king destroyed the serpent on the tree. Because people were getting way too fixated. They were burning incense to it. They didn't understand the symbology. What's the symbology of it? Well, let's take a look. The serpent on the tree that Moses lifted up in the wilderness. Moses had a tantrum over a golden calf, but then he immediately made a bronze serpent afterwards, an idol, as it were. The issue was not idolatry, because it eventually got used as that, and it would have turned out that way no matter what when you make an idol, but it was the matter of the metal and the beast, and whether there was a stick or not in the picture frame. He said, you guys making golden calves, I shall fashion a bronze serpent. Now, people will tell you that Moses has a good testimony. Those people have not read the book of Ezekiel. I believe it may be chapter 30. I want you to look it up. It says right there in the Bible that if a good man does righteousness all the days of his life, but the last deed is evil, He will only be remembered for the evil deed because all the good deeds now become colored by the evil deed. Doesn't matter what else he did. No one will ever talk about it. Can't ever be considered good anymore. Actually, the Bible says if you'll be remembered by the last deed and all the other previous good deeds will never be mentioned. I believe the reason why is because the good deeds are removed from the book. Because if you notice, Moses asked to be removed from the book, and they say books were removed from the Bible with his story in it. But let's get back to the story. And it also says in Ezekiel that if you do bad the whole days of your life and the last thing you do is good, then you'll be remembered all the other stuff you did. And this is in heaven. This is with God. What? Go look this shit up. If you don't believe me, you're lying, dude. Go look it up. Go look it up. Now, do I say this because I'm a Christian? No. The word Christians didn't even used to get called Christians either, by the way. It's a new term. But no, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Christian. But I am telling you so that I just want to say it. That's why. And then I want to tell you also that if it says in Ezekiel, according to the rules of the Bible, you can only be remembered by the last thing you did. So if Moses led all the children out of Israel, and he did this, 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 if the last thing he did was hit the rock at Meribah, which is the act of a wizard in Pharaoh's court, every single way you look at it, you read that Bible, any way you look, God said so too. God said, you ain't going into the promised land for that one. That was a major, big woo. Then all the books that contain Moses and all the versions of history that contained Moses as anything but a magician in Pharaoh's court have been omitted, according to the book of Ezekiel. And that's why you have the story of him making a bronze serpent. Like, obviously he's throwing a tantrum over a golden calf, but why? Because he wants a bronze serpent. And the tablets themselves, are they not also idols? One could argue there is a fungus somewhere, somehow, that's shaped in the same shape as that little stone tablet that you have there. And that script bears a striking resemblance to some other things that I know haven't been identified yet. Perhaps it is the big shit show of an orgy we call letters on some rather large headers in the shape of a fungus yet to be disclosed. The idolater Mose. Anyways, that's when he transformed into a magician, because he took his wand and he struck the rock. You could say no big deal. The Bible says it was huge. As a matter of fact, you can trace back the striking the rock at Meribah incident. Anybody can really, you can. I'll just go look back in the Bible where God threatens to blot the children of Israel out of the book of life. Moses is like, Lord, don't do this thing, please. He doesn't call him Lord. I don't remember what he's saying there, but he like, please don't do this. Instead, blot my name out of the book, he says. I would not do that, but whatever. I hope I wouldn't. Who knows? People don't, free will doesn't exist. We were just talking about this last night. The decisions of your ancestors and things that were made in conditions long before you were ever born have pre-decided. You are witnessing emergent properties. Everyone has lied to you. There's pretty much no such thing as free will. Have fun with that. And anyways, so what makes one person think that they're activating the 3D law of attraction and another person not? Oh, what if the other person who doesn't believe is a stronger projector of 3D law of reality and it works whether you believe in it or not? Then are they taking away your 3D law ultimately? I don't know. I'm just asking you all kinds of questions. I'm not saying it's true. It just seems like a paradox. So we were temporarily removed to the land of the offline.